In the hospital room, as silent as a ruined church, the fluorescent lights illuminated Luna's pale face, where sweat and tears mingled, melting into the cold light of fear. The pain came in waves, not only in her body but also in her mind, where memories of violence, imprisonment, and humiliation surrounded and crushed the fragile reason that remained. Luna no longer knew who she was living for, whether the baby in her womb was her salvation or her final burden. Every heartbeat, every labored breath was a battle between survival and despair. She heard the steady beat of the fetal heart monitor, a small but persistent beat, a reminder that even when the world had crumbled, life still tried to cling, stubborn, cruel, and painfully beautiful. Outside the emergency room, Will sat slumped in a chair, his hands clenched until they bled. He had never felt so weak, never understood what true fear was until the doctor said, serious pregnancy complications. From a man who once believed he could control everything with reason and money, Will now had only 2 words left: powerless. He felt like he was paying the price for everything, for wrong decisions, for empty promises, for love built on guilt and lies. The child was not only Luna's child, but also a mirror of what they had tried to bury: guilt, debt, and an invisible, unforgiving justice approaching. Down the long corridor, doctors and lawyers exchanged tense glances. No one believed this was just a normal birth anymore. Everything was now a suspended sentence, not just medically but also morally. The doctor had to decide between 2 lives, and the lawyer had to prepare for a storm of public opinion if things went wrong. The silence in the conference room was so tense that you could hear the clock ticking like the heartbeat of fate. Fatherhood, motherhood, guilt, justice, all mixed together in a tragedy without a protagonist, where everyone was guilty and no one was pure enough to forgive. Luna slowly lost consciousness in a violent spasm, her mind drifting back to the past, the screams in prison, the beatings, the cold eyes of the jailers. She had endured, survived, but never truly escaped. Today's pain was not just physical, but the memories that resurfaced, tearing at every piece of her crushed soul. In the darkness, she saw a faint silhouette, the child. It did not speak, just looked at her with empty eyes, as if asking, "Will you save me or let me die with your sins?" Will stood up and walked to the glass door, where he could see Luna's small body surrounded by machines, tubes, and hands trying to keep them both alive. He remembered the early days, when everything was simple, when they were in love, when he believed love could erase the past. But now the past was back, cold, sinister, like a ghost that could not be driven away. He wanted to run in, to say something, to take all the pain for her, but he knew it was too late. The alarm sounded, an electrocardiogram tremors. In the emergency room, doctors shouted short commands, and everything fell into chaos. Syringes, ventilators, operating tables, everything worked like a desperate orchestra. Luna's body convulsed, the fetal heart rate dropped, numbers jumping on the screen. Outside, Will collapsed on the floor, his hands covering his head, mumbling nonsense. He had been in court before, won impossible cases, but never had he lost a battle as fierce as this, a battle with no rules, no justice, only loss. In the chaos, a flash of light, the baby was pulled out, small, purple, silent. No cry, just the thick silence of souls awaiting judgment. The doctors looked at each other, then back, trying to revive. 10 seconds.
20.
A minute. Then a weak cry rang out, thin as a thread but enough to pierce the thick wall of despair. Will raised his head, tears welling up, but joy had not yet formed when he saw Luna still, her face pale, her lips moving something no one could hear. The emergency room door closed. One life saved, another at the brink. Outside, the rain began to fall, each drop hitting the glass like the heartbeat of those left behind. Will stepped out into the hallway, the lamplight illuminating his face, turning him into a ghost of himself. He understood that the child was the product of both love and sin, a witness to all the wrongs they had done. And now, Justice was no longer a concept in the law books, but an invisible blade hanging over their heads, ready to strike at any moment. The night stretched on endlessly. In the silence of the room, Luna opened her eyes one last time, seeing while holding the child through the glass. She had no strength to call out, only smiled, and then tears rolled down. She didn't know if it was happiness or relief, only that finally, all the pain had a form. Dawn broke, the hospital bathed in a pale yellow light, gentle and cruel. Will sat alone, the child sleeping in his arms, small and fragile like a secret the world was not yet ready to know. He did not know what the future held, whether this child was a second chance or a sentence he would forever carry. Down the hall, doctors and lawyers exchanged glances, each knowing that this was just the beginning of a case that would shake the town. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, carrying the child's distant cry. And in that moment, the most haunting image appeared, a small hand grasping the father's finger, while the mother's hand still grew cold in the back room. Had this emergency operation truly saved them both, or had it simply opened a new chapter, where life and death, sin and love, would forever be entwined like a red thread that never broke? Under the dim light of Taylor's posh office, Deacon's silhouette leaned against the glass windows overlooking breezy Los Angeles, while Sheila's enthusiastic compliments rang out like knives that cut deep into Taylor's self-esteem. Sheila, with her smug look and her inappropriate compliments, made Taylor uncomfortable because Taylor knew Deacon's feelings were swirling around her, but boundaries had to be strictly maintained. Deacon, standing between Sheila and Taylor, pondered many nights the idea of rekindling a romance with Taylor, but was led by those feelings to a dangerous place. When Taylor was a woman with the expertise of a psychologist, when Deacon was hiding information about Sheila, when Taylor knew she was just a stepping stone in the unspoken power play between Deacon and Sheila. Taylor never crossed any romantic lines with Deacon. She kept her distance. She refused the warm hugs that Deacon thought she would give if Sheila were not around. She left him with a look of pity rather than desire. Deacon, in his heart, realized that he was using Taylor not only as a professional he sought out psychologically, but as someone he sought comfort from, a gentle light while hiding the truth from Sheila, that Luna Nozawa, Sheila's ghost, was hidden by Sheila and Deacon knew. Deacon used Taylor as a mental shelter, as a cover-up, as a veil to cover up the abyss inside him. So was Deacon seeking Taylor a violation of the marriage vows he had made to Sheila? Technically, seeking professional help from Taylor did not violate any vows, but morally and emotionally, there was a deep rift. Sheila favored Taylor over anyone else associated with the Forrester family, except her son, Finn, and nephew, Hayes Finnegan. Taylor has every right to refuse to take Deacon on as a psychological patient. She is not emotionally compelled to agree. But when she takes that leap, when she lets Deacon believe that she only wants pity, nothing more, a sympathy forged from her own trauma, the audience is forced to put aside their doubts and accept that these two poor souls can find comfort in each other. Taylor is clearly the one who suffers the most in this picture. Ridge Forrester breaks off his engagement and remarries Brooke Logan, while Deacon is besotted with Sheila, who is pushed into a corner by his reckless niece. Family dramas, lies, relationships bound by hope and fear all roll into one emotional mess. Sheila, the notorious villain, now yearns for reconciliation, and Deacon wants to keep it alive. But if Deacon separates from Sheila, Sheila will live alone, and the reconciliation immediately becomes a failure. Sheila wants to be mentioned again, wants to be included in Hope and Liam's remarriage, but Beth's suggestion that Sheila not be invited is a new spark, and if accepted, it will be a blow to Sheila. She tells Deacon that she wants to attend the wedding, unaware that Beth has already told Hope and Liam that Sheila's personality makes her feel strange, and she doesn't want her there. The upcoming wedding is not just a romantic ceremony, it's an arena where Sheila and Deacon will be forced to choose. Keep their hearts or keep their schemes. Sheila's reaction will be crucial. If she doesn't control herself, a hand will pull out a gun and shoot the dream of reconciliation. Deacon will be exposed for having lied to himself and his wife all along. Taylor, on the outside but on the front line of emotions, will pay the price for stepping in. And the audience will watch. Will Taylor just watch? Or will she turn the tables? In that moment, a haunting image appeared. Sheila looked in the mirror, only to see 10 toes clearly visible, remembering the time she lost one in an old crisis. Deacon stood behind her, his eyes wavering between love and power. And a dangerous question rang out like an unspoken command. When Taylor began to step into Deacon and Sheila's world, would she be able to hold her own, or would she become a weapon in the hands of that powerful man and woman? In the bright lights of Beverly Hills, where the Forresters and Spencers are preparing for the most anticipated event of the year, the atmosphere at Forrester Mansion is filled with laughter, clinking crystal, and well wishes. Everything is too perfect to be true. Hope's wedding dress was designed by Ridge himself, the invitations were printed in gold, and the guest list was strictly controlled to avoid any complications. Liam Spencer, after years of turmoil and illness, is finally about to marry the woman he believes is his destiny. But beneath the veneer of fake happiness, a storm is brewing, silent, deadly, and named Hope Logan. For while everyone sees a radiant bride, only Hope knows that inside her body is a secret, a tiny life that does not belong to the man who is about to say, "I do." Every slight wave of nausea, every wave of dizziness, every stray heartbeat when she met Carter Walton's eyes, all of it seemed like signs she'd deliberately ignore, as if it didn't exist if she didn't acknowledge it. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you close your eyes. It grows silently, like a black sprout breaking through the peaceful soil of a pretend life. Carter doesn't know yet, and maybe he doesn't need to know, at least not until Hope stands at the altar, arms around Liam, and feels the child inside her stir for the first time. That will be the moment she can't back down, can't escape the vows she's about to make. Because if she confesses, everything will fall apart. The wedding, her honor, her place in the Forresters, and the perfect mask she's spent years building. But if she stays silent, the guilt will slowly consume her soul, day by day, breath by breath. Deacon, Hope's father, has seen the signs but doesn't dare ask. He'd lived long enough to know that sometimes the truth didn't need to be told. It just needed to be buried deep enough for someone else to bear. But Sheila, with her knife-like eyes and survivor's instincts, knew everything. She knew, and she smiled, because if anyone understood the power of a secret, it was Sheila Carter. She knew that with just the right hint, Hope would crumble. And she waited for that moment, like a predator stalking its prey. Meanwhile, Luna Nozawa, the other woman pregnant in the dark, felt a strange sympathy for Hope. They were both hiding something, both carrying unwanted lives. But unlike Hope, Luna wasn't afraid. She wanted to use the baby to hold a man accountable. Hope was the opposite. She wanted to erase it all. She didn't want Carter to know, didn't want Liam to suspect, didn't want the world to see her as a traitor. The wedding day was approaching. Every dress fitting, every photo shoot, every small pre-wedding party made Hope feel like she was going through her own maze. Every time she saw Carter from afar, his eyes still filled with the light of old love, her heart ached. Because between them, what existed was not just memories, but consequences. As for Liam, he was too trusting, too absorbed in the dream of recreating a family. The fake cancer he had overcome made him believe that he was given a second chance, that fate was compensating him with hope, with love, with the life he thought he had lost. But fate never gives happiness without demanding a price. The night before the wedding, Hope woke up in the middle of a nightmare, cold sweat soaking her back. In her dream, she saw Carter holding a child, looking at her with eyes that were not blaming but only knowing, the kind of knowing that made people fall apart from the inside. When she woke up, the sound of rain outside mixed with the sound of her heart pounding in her chest, as if the storm had started right inside her. Then the fateful morning came. White rose petals fell on the aisle. The bride's footsteps echoed like a countdown clock. Brooke Logan, proud and tired, watched her daughter walk with pride and fear. She had been a bearer of similar secrets, and she knew nothing stays buried forever. Sheila appeared in the crowd, uninvited, but unseen, a shadow in the midst of a white wedding. Her eyes swept over Hope, paused, and smiled. Hope felt cold. In the moment Liam placed his hand on her shoulder, she realized his hand was warm, honest, loving, but unfamiliar. Because the child in her womb did not belong to him. When the priest asked if she would marry Liam, she heard the baby's heartbeat in her chest beat like a drum of judgment.
Time stopped.
A tear fell onto her white dress, not from happiness, but from fear. Behind, Carter stood silently. He had come not to protest, but to see the woman he loved one last time. But when his eyes met Hope's, she knew he understood. He didn't need words. There was an invisible thread between them, broken, but still suffocating. The wedding went on. The toasts were made, the glasses were raised, the smiles were carefully arranged. But inside, Hope, everything had fallen apart. The wedding night came, Liam holding her in his arms, unaware that every move he made was a stab at the guilt she was trying to hide. While he slept, Hope stood before the mirror, watching her belly reflected in the dim light. A life was growing, and soon it would tell the world the truth. Across town, Sheila opened a glass of wine, looked at Hope's picture on her phone. She whispered something, a silent promise to the darkness. Because Sheila knew that child could become a new